This is Yair Davidiy speaking to you from Jerusalem, the capital of Israel, and I'm speaking to you on behalf of Brit-Am, Hebrew nations, an organisation that finds the lost 10 tribes amongst Western nations. We identify the lost 10 tribes with peoples who settled in the West. From amongst these Western peoples there emerged immigrants who went to North America and they established Canada and the USA. Now we are speaking about the USA. The USA was established by people from all over the world. The early settlers of the USA came primarily from the British Isles. After that, they came from areas in Europe, later in the 1800s, especially from Germany and from other areas. And we have shown how those who came from Germany and from Italy and from other regions very often may be statistically and physically shown to have been different from those who left behind. And we have proven, both from the Bible and also from secular evidence, that these peoples were different from those who remained, that they were separate, and they were elements also from the Israelite nations who were separating themselves out, picking themselves up and moving out towards the USA, where they were destined to give expression to their Israelite destiny through the nation of the United States of America. The early foundation elements of the USA, those who gave rise to America, they came from areas in the British Isles, especially the western areas of Wales, of Scotland, of northwest of England, of Ulster, Scotland, Ireland, where we find at that time predominance of tribes with tribal names and characteristics that may be traced back to Manasseh. Manasseh was one of the sons of Joseph. Joseph gave rise to two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. We have traced these descendants of these tribes, Ephraim and Manasseh, to elements in Western Europe. They become especially prominent in the British Isles. Some of them may be traced back through their names and other things to Manasseh, others to Ephraim. We found Manasseh predominant in certain areas, and from these areas came an overwhelming proportion of the early settlers of the USA. So this in itself helps us confirm that the USA was destined to give expression to the tribal goals, aims and destiny of Manasseh. So this is our first point. The USA is Manasseh because of this, because demographically a good portion or an important section of its population are physically descendants from Manasseh. Others are descended from other tribes of Israel. On the whole, Israelite elements in the USA have been predominant. They've been very significant numerically and also qualitatively. And in addition to that, we have indications of biblical prophecy. Jacob, the father of Joseph, he blessed the two sons Ephraim and Manasseh. He crossed his arms in doing so in such a way as to indicate that the blessing to Manasseh would come to fruition later than that of Ephraim. See Genesis 48:17. And he crossed his arms over, and he crossed his arms over in such a way that the indications are that Manasseh will become great, but Manasseh will become great after Ephraim. And the USA indeed emerged from Britain on the whole, not only concerning its population, but also concerning its culture, its values, the very thing that it is. The USA grew up, as if to say, in the shadow of British protection, or at least with the assistance of Britain. And when it grew to adulthood, when it had become sufficiently great, it seamlessly took over the role of the primary force in the world, together with Britain, henceforth playing a secondary role. So this was what had been destined for Manasseh, and this is what the USA did. Also, the very name Manasseh, or Manasseh in Hebrew, spoken Hebrew, in Hebrew it connotes responsible representation, which is the foundationary principle, the goal, the thing that gave rise to the USA is based on this principle of responsible representation. It's the only nation in the world about which this could be said, and this principle is encompassed in the meaning of the name Manasseh in Hebrew, and by Shimshon Raphael Hirsch in his commentary on the Bible, where he shows us the very name Manasseh means responsible representation. And also we have America. America is a name applied to the continents of America, North and South America, but in common speech and everyday language, when we say America, we mean the USA, so America is a name for the USA. And the name America is derived from Americo Vespucci, an Italian sailor who proved that the continents of North and South America were not part of Asia, but nevertheless Americo Vespucci received his name America, from which we get the word America. He received his name from the area in which he lived. He came from northern Italy, and northern Italy and southern France at that time had this name Americo, which was a Latinized version of the Hebrew Machir, or HaMachiri, descendants of Machir. Machir was the firstborn son of Manasseh. So indirectly we may say that America was named after Machir, the firstborn son of Manasseh. We also have the nickname Yank in America itself. Yankee is a name applied to northern people from the north of the USA. But in the eyes of foreigners, in the eyes of people overseas, Yank or Yankee means anyone who comes from the USA. All Americans in the eyes of foreigners are called Yanks or Yankees. And this word Yankee is short for Jacob, for Jake. It's a Hebrew way of pronouncing the word Yaakov in northern Hebrew. And also in Yiddish or Ashkenazic Hebrew, we have the same expressions. And so this is significant. It has significance. Divine Providence so wanted that the nickname of Americans, people from the sense of Manasseh, should be named after Jacob. And Jacob symbolically was associated more with Manasseh than he was with Ephraim. Ephraim was associated more with his father Joseph, whereas Manasseh was associated with their grandfather, with Yaakov, Yankee. And also we have the presidential system. The presidential system of government is similar to that of the kings of ancient Israel, especially those who came from Manasseh. We have Schlanger, a book by Rabbi Schlanger, analyzes the different judges and rulers that were in the land of ancient Israel, and the kings who ruled over the northern tribes of Israel. The northern tribes are separated from the southern tribes, that separated from Judah, set up their own 10 tribe kingdom of Israel, and they were ruled over by kings from various tribes. And Rabbi Schlanger shows how those tribes from Manasseh are ruled through the presidential system. They were elected for specific purposes. They had quite substantial powers, but these powers were limited to the goal for which they were to rule, for the goal for which they had been appointed, which was different from that of the other kings, especially the kings of Judah. We find this characteristic repeated in the presidential system of the USA today. So for these reasons and for other reasons, we identify the USA with Manasseh. We identify the USA with Manasseh, I repeat, because of tribal demography. That a good portion of the early settlers, especially the important elements amongst the settlers, came from areas in Europe where we can find indications through tribal names and history and so on that the people descended from Manasseh had settled. We also know that Manasseh was to become greater after Ephraim, and to grow up in the shadow of Ephraim, as if to say, to follow after Ephraim, and this is what the USA did. When we identify Ephraim with Britain, the USA grew up in the shadow of Britain and took over from Britain. And also the name Manasseh means in Hebrew representative, responsible representation, which is a foundational principle of the USA. Also know that America is named after Machir, HaMachiri, the firstborn son of Manasseh, and that the nickname Yank applied to Americans is a shortened form of Jacob. Jacob was to represent, or is linked with the name Manasseh. And we have the presidential system, which too was a characteristic of Manasseh and was carried on in the USA. We also may put at a point that the name Machir, from which we derive the word America in Latinized medieval Latin, gave rise to America. America is named after Mechir HaMechiri. The name in Hebrew, Mechir, means sale or the principle of selling. In other words, the capitalist principle. And America is the capitalist country. It is the only real capitalist country in the world, and it gave rise to capitalism. And the whole soul of America is based upon this principle of fair play, of the right to buy and sell, and of the other principles that are associated with Manasseh. Thank you.